Hi, my name is Monroe Mann, host of Before the Big Break. We're here at the beautiful Hilton, East Brunswick, in East Brunswick, New Jersey, for another wild and exciting episode of Before the Big Break. We have a very special guest today, as always, and we're going to go through those doors and see if we can find him. Follow me! Today's guest, his name is Gary W. Goldstein. You might not know his name, but you certainly know his movies. You know, such hits as Pretty Woman, Under Siege, Under Siege 2. Maybe you heard of the Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere. These are all films produced by Gary W. Goldstein. And it's a distinct pleasure that we're going to be able to talk with him in about 25 seconds. Let's go check him out. I think Gary's right around this corner. Let's take a look. He might be. He is. Hey, Gary.
Monroe, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Excellent.
This is going to be a very exciting interview. This guy has made some of the most amazing movies of all time. And today, we're going to find out how the heck he did it. Shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. The gentleman who wrote Cannibal Women ended up writing Pretty Woman.
And I'll tell you the story
That
of
is
how we
amazing.
met, because it's fascinating. But he's the only client I ever produced for, and the only reason I did was because he came to me and insisted. We had an extraordinary relationship professionally and personally. I was not comfortable producing for my other client. I didn't like, there was a feeling of a conflict of interest. If I was going to represent them, I would represent them. If I was going to produce a writer, that was a different matter. Today, producer managers it's very common. But I just thought, I'm going to draw a clean line and I'm going to be a producer and not a representative. Over the course of a number of years, I represented writers for about 10 years. And during the writer's strike of '88, one of my clients came to me with a script and he said, the business is dead. Could you raise a little money? I would like to direct my script. And I said, well, I've never tried, I can do that. Let me try. And I went out and I raised an embarrassingly small 2 postage stamps worth of money. It was $250,000, which to me seemed like a lot, but I thought it was just a part of a budget.
Let me interrupt. I think some of the people watching will be very curious to know, what was the process that you took to raise this initial $250,000? You're a new producer and you've never done this before. Who did you go to? What was the sales pitch? Why did they end up trusting you to give you the money?
Well, it was a very different time. Back in the 80s, this was 1988, the landscape was littered with small independent companies. Business was done very differently back then. A lot of companies, they would go to the film festival, the film markets, Cannes, American Film Market, etc., MEFID, and they would have artwork for films that didn't exist, but they pretended they did. And they would show this artwork and they would say, here's this beautiful artwork, here's the title, here are the credits. They were fictitious names. Here's a storyline, here's a beautiful picture. And they would take it to the buyers, and if the buyer bought, they would take the money and go make the film and then deliver it. That was the time. So I went to there was a company called Empire Films. It was a B film company, B- film company, and yet they had a low budget division. Everything they did was low budget, but they had a lower budget division. What I call a no budget division. And I went in and this fella, Charlie, who owned the company, showed me 10 different brochures. And I said, what are these? He said, these are the films you could make. I said, okay. He said, all I ask is you have to use one of the titles because those are what I pre-sold. There was one called Cannibal Women. It wasn't the title of our film. I said, well, it's the least offensive, but it sounds Cannibal Women. Could I add to it? He said, you can add to it, you just have to use those 2 words. So we named the film Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death because we thought no one could ever take seriously this film. They'd have to laugh with us. He gave us $250,000. I went to my client and I said, we have $250,000. I'll raise some more. He said, nope, that's the budget. Okay. I said, good luck. He said, no, you raised the money, you're responsible for the money, therefore you're the producer, and besides, you're the only one I trust. So we're going to make this film together. I said, okay. Neither of us had any idea what producing or making a film involved. He had never directed, I had never produced. We had a date 4 weeks from then to go to Sundance, the Sundance Institute in Utah, to their production lab on a film, which we'll talk about later. It was then called 3000. 3000 later became Pretty Woman. So we had 4 weeks, and I said to my client, Jonathan, who happened to be the author of 3000, we've got the money, we'll make it when we get back from Utah. And he said, no, we have to make this film and be done with it before we leave.
And this is the Cannibal Woman film.
Cannibal Women. I said, well, that's only a few weeks. Okay, because we didn't know. There were no rules, we had no idea, so we said, okay, fine, we'll go make this film. We allowed 2 weeks for pre-production, 11 days for shooting, and 3 days for editing, and then we were on a plane to leave. A week into pre-production, it was still the two of us. I had 10 titles, he had 10 titles. I was the producer, he was the director, but we wore many other hats. And one night, at about 11 o'clock at night, we're exhausted, and I looked at him and I said, I think we're supposed to have a crew. And it seems like it would be easier if we had more people. That night we called everyone that we knew. We said, tomorrow, bring everyone you know, and we're hiring the whole crew. And the next day, 100 people show up, and we interviewed everybody, and I said, oh, have you ever held a camera in your hand? You're a cinematographer. Great.
You guys listening to this? This is brilliant stuff.
You know, you over here, you look like you're well dressed. You're our wardrobe person. And so it was. We had, it was hysterical because we were giving everyone a break. They were working for no money. We had a wonderful cast. We had Bill Maher and Shannon Tweed and Adrienne Barbeau to make this little feminist spoof comedy. We had, as I recall, in 11 days of shooting, about 30 company moves. Wow. Because we didn't know that you shouldn't do that. So we would shoot and run, shoot and run, shoot and run, and this went on, and we finished the film. Now, it turns out it actually is an adorable little feminist comedy, and it, of course, never made it into a theater.
Is it available on DVD?
It is on, I assume it's on DVD.
DVD.
Of course, back then there was no DVD, there was VHS. It ran on cable for at least 12, maybe 15 years, so it did very, very well. And that was our first, I lost my virginity to Cannibal Women.
Not a bad thing.
And we had an absurd amount of fun because we really didn't know it was guerrilla filmmaking at either its finest or its worst.
So do you know Roger Corman? Are you in that same league of filmmakers?
That was a Corman-esque, I know the gentleman. This was not with him, and I've never worked with him, but I know who he is, and it was spiritually akin to what he does, or did. And, but I got the bug. I thought, my God, producing is a riot. It's a lot of fun. And it seemed essentially correct for me. Mm-hmm. Meaning my personality, what I enjoy doing, one of the skill sets I seem to have is to hold a vision, be very enthusiastic, be persuasive, and align people around a set of goals, around an idea. I enjoyed it. So we went on from there and we made several other independent films. Long story short, eventually, I realized that producing was what I wanted to do. And at some point, I dissolved the literary management company I stopped representing writers.
So let me interrupt for 1 second,
Yeah.
just to clarify. So while you were shooting Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle, now available on DVD, you were still operating a talent management firm for screenwriters.
For writers and writer-directors.
Writers and writer-directors. Those were the two things. No, you were no longer practicing law.
No. The fact that I didn't have a lengthy producing resume, and Jonathan didn't have a lengthy writer resume, or a director resume, it's irrelevant.
How did, based on the fact that you're saying that you were a relatively unknown and inexperienced producer at the time, and the screenwriter prior to this film did not have any major screen credit. How did you elicit the trust from other people to believe? It's amazing that what you're saying. You're nobody, the screenwriter's nobody, but we managed to get into Disney and convince them, and then get Richard Gere and Julie Roberts. I think that's where a lot of up-and-coming producers and stumble, and screenwriters. Like, I've got these amazing ideas, but I don't have any of the connections. But apparently, you were able to parlay what you had into getting this deal made.
I think it's a two-part answer. Not only did we do it with Disney, we did it with New Regency, we did it with Vestron, we did it with the Sundance Institute, very prestigious. I have to give a lot of credit to the writer. There was so much quality on the page that it wasn't a terribly difficult task to persuade people of its merit. But having said that, you do have to open the door. You have to start the conversation. And I knew that I didn't have, I wasn't Jerry Bruckheimer, and I wasn't, what have you. The only thing I had going for me was who I am. Whatever is my skill set, whatever are my personality traits, all I could do was open the door and be authentic. And I realized that I couldn't worry about what I lacked. I couldn't worry about who I was competing with. All I had to do was be authentic. If I was genuine, if I was honest, if I was enthusiastic, if I was intelligent, it would be enough. I had to believe that would be enough. And I believe it is enough, always. And it doesn't matter what stage you're at, it's still enough for me today. Because everyone in Hollywood's wondering, what are you going to do next? Well, the conversation's still the same, fundamentally. I think that's the key.
Safari with Mana Safari and cruise the Bahamas with Julia Roberts, go romping around with Christina and Brittany, and go to the beach with Christina Ricci. The Hollywood girls are on my mind. I want them all to stand in line. I want them all to shake our hands. I want them all to be crazy morning fans. I want to tour Italy with Angelina Jolie and go backpacking with Anna Paquin. Ride my moped with Jennifer Lopez and go to the movies with Cameron Diaz. I run in the fields with Jessica Biel. I want to hang nightly with Keira Knightley. I think I'm in love with Anna Kournikova. I want to know more about Mandy Moore and Cooper. Hollywood girls who are my mind.